Oh, good Lord. I left my house. It was 40 degrees and sunny on our way up. I get down here. It's 34 and snow. The F10's been sitting outside for a couple of days. Sister-in-law dropped this thing off. It's back for a couple more things. When we found this car, serendipitous deal, timing and everything like that. However, it needed a few things. Valve cover gasket leaks pretty badly to the point where you pull up to a stoplight and you smell and can sometimes even see the smoke from oil, and the oil pan gasket is starting to let go as well. So here we can see I've got a pan gasket and the crazy one-time use aluminum bolt set, and I've got a complete valve cover with gasket as well. I never do gaskets on plastic valve covers. It's not worth it. Gotta do the whole cover. So luckily, some aftermarkets are starting to make covers. I think this one's actually from Euro Parts or Ryan or something like that. So not an OE BMW part, but inexpensive enough where I don't really care. Also, I'm just wondering what the hell that thing is. I'll have to look at that on the original as well. But these, of course, come with new hardware, new gaskets, new everything. At this point, I'm just waiting for the car to dry off because I hate working on drippy cars. So I might not even work on it till tomorrow, but we will see. This is something that's next on the docket. And I think I've got my mother's M Sport F31 328D coming down for a new splitter. She broke off over the winter, and then differential transfer case fluids, things like that. So, anywho, yes. Well, it is not fully dry yet, but it's pretty close. So, this is an N55. You guys all know and love it so well. And I will be going for the valve cover first. So, these are pretty simple. Much easier than working on an E90 or something like that. I will be pulling this brace just because you're always better off having a little more room to work. On the front side of things, on a 5 Series, you actually have room to pull the valve cover off these are Valvetronic engines, the N55, so there's always a little bit of extra room on the tower there. But of course, we've got these little fragile vacuum line covers everywhere, and we'll have to pull the intake tube for the turbo off and stuff a rag in there and not forget it. And then, of course, there's the high-pressure direct injection fuel lines and all that other fun stuff. So these guys, there are special wrenches for that. I don't have them here, so I'm going to wing it and hope for the best. If I can't get that off, I will order one. But either way, I don't work on a lot of the turbo engines. I prefer the NA. But this leaks very badly, so it is definitely time. I'm going to start with the turbo intake tube and the airbox. Work with a couple vacuum lines here, and we'll see what's what. Never worked on an F10 before. BMW. There are a duo, not a trio, but T20s. There are 3 of them that hold the wire harness connector on this side of the engine bay. And this side, it's just one of those little clips where you can pull up like an E46. What the hell were they thinking there? Ridiculous. So I don't want to get too far ahead, but disconnected the O2s. The main harness that actually sits on it has another 2-pin connector for the EVAP or boost control or whatever that is down there. The O2 sensor plugs you can just sort of stab out of the way. The ignition coils are standard fare, any 2003 or newer BMW. Lift up on the tab, and it will disconnect automatically. These all look good. It does not look like they're all the same age, however. Number 3 looks brand new. Eccentric shaft sensor. I think we pulled that out with the cover, but right now I'm just working on these little connectors for the fuel injectors. And I'm not doing anything too sophisticated here. Just popping a very small Phillips gently in the side there. And giving a little tug on the connector. Sorry if I blurred that up. Same process for all 6. Then I'm going to take the 3 8mm grounding nuts off. but leave the rest of it in there. I'd actually hold the injectors in. And then I'll start working on the hard lines, which we'll have to loosen on both sides. But yeah, once we get the electrical connectors out of the injectors, we can pull the entire harness and set that aside too, because that will obviously be a pretty important thing that's in the way. So I'm extremely cautiously loosening one of the fuel line fittings on this thing. The fuel rails on direct injection engines run at hundreds of atmospheres of pressure. Very, very terrifying. So in the wrong situation, you could pretty easily get a jet stream of fuel that could cut through skin or into your eyeball or something like that. So far, looks okay. No problem with a regular 14 mil quality wrench. Loosening these up. So I'll take those all off, the injector side and the rail side. I'm gonna number them up so I don't lose them and figure out which one's which, because you want them on the correct injector, certainly. And after that, we're gonna start going through the perimeter bolts. This little solenoid right here, I took my needle nose and wiggled it off the valve cover, and it actually pulled it off the solenoid too. So just be cognizant, you do have to disconnect that. After that though, like I said, I'm going to be going for the perimeter bolts and slowly but surely working on it. My sophisticated marking method with a Sharpie seems okay. So now I'm going to pull these off pair by pair, pop them over here, and we'll get going on perimeter bolts. Okay, I think I've got everything pulled. I will have to get my little pry bar and just sort of wiggle it around after I do my double check. But usually there's a little bit of adhesion just from sitting on there so long. These bolts are almost all finger tight. My little 3/8 battery ratchet took them out without any additional farting around. I guess I will probably pull the eccentric shaft sensor first just to prevent the potential of damage. Looks like that seal was leaking too. So I'm gonna do that, leave her up over the edge a little bit and see if we can get her to come loose. I gotta say, this was enthusiast owned. This was not dealer maintained. I don't see varnishing. I normally see a ton of varnishing. So somebody used the right oil and I changed it at a reasonable interval. This car I think has 115,000 miles on it now. And that is showroom fresh. So A+ to the previous owner of this 535. It is an M Sport 6-speed, so it makes sense that they cared, but that is great to see. The gasket was fully split on this thing. I mean, it's just rock hard too. So that wasn't sealing. The cover itself is in good shape. I never actually know when I'm doing these what kind of condition the cover is going to be in, but it's actually fairly supple on the intake side yet. But yeah, the exhaust heat just absolutely cooked it. So that's done for, but that's, again, just fine. I did buy a new valve cover for it. You can see a little bit of schmoo from the PCV. This car has been living in the winter weather zone, so I do kind of like that they integrated the PVC into the valve cover, because it takes care of 2 service jobs, and it just brings them into one, which I don't want to do. But when I go ahead and do it, it's fine. Now, I still don't know what this is. It fell out of the valve cover I took off of the car, so I know it's supposed to be there. And also, doesn't inspire a lot of confidence how those fit in here. But we'll do it. You know, it's a brand new valve cover. It should be okay. The key is always just making sure that none of this gasket falls out or gets pinched or anything crazy like that when you're installing it, because the clearance between this and the back of that cam phaser tower, or I guess it's valve lift, but anyway, the top part of that tower right there is always just really, really tough to get the valve cover over. So going slow, taking great care. The part was sitting like right here. I actually took it out and sitting right there. So I don't know what it does. Oh, is that the Valvetronic actuator? Wow, they've made those smaller. Maybe that's a one-piece thing. Crazy. Wow. Okay, yeah, it looks like that is one piece. Props, I guess. They made it smaller. So yeah, I'm just going to clean up the surface around the edge as well as I can, and then very carefully get that new one in position to pop back on. Well, I got all the mating surfaces cleaned up. I guess it's time to carefully pop the new one on. Well, hopefully I remember to take that little clip out of there. Got it on. It's all fine. My process was just very carefully hold the gaskets in by hand, set it on the back of the cam tower, then reach my hand in through the 5/6 and actually kind of bow the back of the valve cover out over the cam phaser tower, and that'll just slip it right down. I did finger tight these, and then I lifted up the cover and checked to make sure that the gasket was still in the valve cover. Everything looks perfect, so I think we're good. But it's worth double checking now, because if you pinch it somewhere, this all has to come back off and get replaced. So it's not worth it. So there's a little hose that broke off of this thing, and since it's got a sensor in it, I'm guessing it's not cheap. Of course, just brittle old plastic hose. All I did was slice it off and sacrificed an old piece of, new old stock heater hose. I'm just going to slip that on both ends and hose clamp it. Better than new. Much better. Don't forget to plug back in that little boost control solenoid, and then also transfer over your little vacuum cap. The new valve cover likely will not come with one. But yeah, it's going back together nice. I am ordering a eccentric shaft seal because it's like $7. And I forgot to do that before. This guy sits up on the intake tube. These sit on a little metal bracket that we took off, which is somewhere around here, and he uses those little bolt deals. So I'm gonna throw it back together most of the way this evening, but I don't have that sensor, so I can't do everything. So I'm sure that'll flatten out, but it's just under a teeny tiny bit of vacuum for PCV, and it's electronically controlled, so I think that'll be just fine. Waiting on this gasket right here before I slap that electrical contact in there. And then fire it up and then put the beauty cover back on it. It wasn't too bad. Once that's done, I can move to the bottom side, and I'm doing a pan gasket on this car too, so blech. But anyway, ta-da, valve cover. Looks okay to me.